So, Mike, when it comes to the current market, pricing, a seller, when they're thinking about listing their house for sale, they give you a call and they ask you to come over and you take a look at the market, the area that they live in. And I know you're looking at similar homes to their house and what they've sold for, but not only just what they sold for, but also what's currently on the market, which would be their competition.
Right.
So when you're talking to them about pricing a house, what is your advice to them?
So I like to look at the statistics first. So I use a program called Trend Graphics. And so I am able to look at the market in general on a macro level, say in that specific zip code. And then I'll micro it down to certain characteristics of that home. So if it's a 4-bedroom, it's a 2-bath, is it, 2,000 square feet? So I'll run between 18 to 2,200 square feet, because that's kind of your buyer for that specific niche market. And then we'll micro it down even more to the neighborhood. And it's real more extensive than that. That's kind of a blanket overview. But I really talk to a seller and say, okay, well, first, what is your motivation on selling? What's the reason? What's the why? I want to know the why, because the why is going to play a big impact on our timeframes. And so knowing that information, I'm able to approach the seller and say, okay, based on what I see statistically, based on what I see in your neighborhood, this is where I project the house selling for. This is a great list price to go for. Now, in today's market, Jeff, because it is such a fluid market, pricing is key. Pricing is so darn important at this point. Condition, location are also key factors as well. But if you focus on a good listing price, it's going to attract the right buyer to the house. It's going to help sell the house quicker and less headache for my sellers, right? Because remember, the sellers have to prep the house, clean the house, keep everything tidy, leave the house if you work from home. Those are huge determining factors that are put on the seller. And so if you're able to sell the house sooner, relieves that stress, makes the transaction much easier and simpler. So it's a great question. There's a lot of key factors that go into it as well, but price is key.
So when you say price is key, you're talking about when you come up with that range. Let's just use an example. Let's say that range is 525 to 575. Okay, I don't know why I picked those numbers, but I did.
Yeah.
So that's what the range is. Houses in the neighborhood that are selling similar are selling within that range. Now it depends on the condition of the house compared to the condition of the homes that have sold and compared to the condition of the homes that are currently for sale, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
All right, so now motivation, okay, the seller's motivation. Let's say that the seller is moving out of town and they bought a house in Tennessee.
Yes.
Again, I don't know why they'd buy a house in Tennessee, but they did.
Yeah.
All right, so would you say that's a fairly motivated seller?
Absolutely.
So absolutely. Where would you talk to them about pricing that house that ranges between 525 and 575?
So once we determine price and kind of where the statistics lie, we look at key factors like attributes. So does it have a pool? Does it have upgrades? Once we figure that part of it out, then we want to price it within that range. And really the market determines the value. So even if we price it a little under at the lower end of that spectrum, the buyers out there are going to constitute what market value is. Because what market value is, Jeff, is this. What is a willing seller willing to sell their house for? What is a willing buyer to buy that house for? You put them together. That's the formula. No more, no less. So you put a very good price. You may have one buyer. You may have 2 or 3 buyers in this market. But pricing is key. So if I were to say, okay, they come to me, I have to be in Tennessee in a month, 30 days, we have to be aggressive on that price.
Okay, so in other words, the lower end is 5.25 in my example. Would you suggest listing at $499? Is that a possibility, or is that too far down?
It would depend on the neighborhood. It would depend on the zip code. Because in certain zip codes, absolutely, Jeff. Because even if they put a list price of $499, a seller doesn't have to accept that offer at $499. Right. If they get it, they could wait for other offers. They could counter that buyer if they want to counter them at a different number. But it would really depend on the neighborhood, on the market. Now, is there a lot of demand for that neighborhood, or is there not a lot of demand? If there's not, then absolutely, that would be a great price, because again, the buyers will dictate the price.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I've always heard it's the market value is willing, as you say, also educated.
Yes.
So the seller has to understand what they're selling, and a buyer has to understand what they're buying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Great points. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jeff.
it.